Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. And our guest has already joined us this morning, former Congressman Joe Semplinsky. Joe, thanks so much for being on the program.
Happy to be here in the hot tub at the Hesselson studio.
I love it. I like that. I might steal that.
Good statement. Yeah, right. That's from me to you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I always steal good stuff.
That's good. That's good.
Perfect timing. We didn't plan it this way,
No.
but last night a big historic vote.
The House of Representatives does not schedule votes around
this interview.
Yep. I think that should have been part of the reform.
Yes, yeah, might have been in there. Who knows? So what did you think? I was kind of surprised that it went this smoothly.
Yeah, it was sort of interesting how many votes there were at the end, because there was a lot of drama earlier in the day. And one of the things that's sort of interesting is all of America got to learn about leadership elections and speaker elections at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
and now everybody was learning about rules procedures. What has to go through, how does the rules committee work, and how does a rule work on the House floor. So we're having a little bit of a civics lesson as a country,
which is a good thing.
It actually is a good. That is a good thing. But earlier in the day, there was all this drama about the rule, and for the folks out there in TV land, the rule is the first vote usually before a major vote in the House of Representatives. It sets the parameters of debate, what amendments would be in order or not in order, that sort of thing. And traditionally, that is a party line vote.
Right.
Even if you don't support the underlying bill, oftentimes majority members will vote with the majority. And even if you do support the underlying bill, minority members will vote with the minority. The idea being that the terms of debate, are a more partisan issue. In this case, you had a chunk of Republicans not vote for the rule, which is very unusual. But then you had a chunk of Democrats vote for the rule, which is even more unusual.
Which is wild, yeah.
And what ended up happening was the bill passed with so many votes, the rule was actually unnecessary.
Right.
You could have passed it under suspension of the rules. And that's how the mechanism how the House passes less controversial legislation. You need to pass with 2/3 instead of 1/2. But by doing that, you don't need the rule. So there were so many votes for the bill at the end of the day that all the rule drama earlier in the day was actually sort of unnecessary. So I was a little that was sort of my reaction was
well, Speaker McCarthy seemed to be
easier
shocked.
than I thought.
He seemed to be shocked. McCarthy, did you see him last?
Yeah.
He's like, did you see these numbers?
Right. So he was very happy with how it went.
He should be.
And you had
they've counted him out twice now.
Yeah.
Majorly, and on this exact issue, and he's got to be proud of himself.
Yeah. Let alone the Speaker's election.
Yeah.
But where I think the major change in how this all played out occurred was the fact that the House Republicans were able to put something on Biden's desk.
Right.
Right. Because Biden was saying for months, I won't negotiate clean debt ceiling. I'm not even going to talk to these people, which was grossly irresponsible.
And that's why we're still cutting down to the last moment.
Oh, right. But this is the House. We haven't done the Senate yet.
No.
There's no guarantee this goes through the Senate. I think I think it's going to go through the Senate. I think this will ultimately be the law. But the Senate's the Senate, and they have their own. You want to talk about procedure? The procedure book for the House is like this. The procedure book for the Senate's like that. So they got who knows what happens over there. But so you had about 9 months where the president wouldn't even talk to anybody about this, and the reason was he thought what would happen is there was nothing that could unify the Republicans enough to put it on his desk. They weren't going to be able to make an offer, and so at the last minute he'd swoop in and say, "Here's a clean debt ceiling, take it or leave it."
Right.
And that was his plan all along. And the Republicans mucked that up in a very unified way, saying, no, we have something that we can agree on. Now, there's some division, obviously, over the final bill, but we can agree on this as an opening offer. And that very much disrupted the president's plan because now he can't say, they won't raise the debt limit, because they just did raise the debt limit.
Right.
So if something goes wrong, it's going to be much more on him. And you saw this. Last time we had a debt limit problem or issue or whatever, it was with Obama.
Yeah, 2011, I think.
And the polls all said, we're going to blame the Republicans and this goes south. And that gave Obama a lot of leverage. Now, the polls were sort of 60-40, we're going to blame Biden. And that was because you could honestly say the Republicans responsibly raised the debt limit in their first offer, which they did. So that fundamentally changed the game. So, apparently Kevin is a better vote counter than anybody thought he was going to be. And maybe not vote counter, but vote wrangler.
Yeah.
Because you had people supporting this bill that if you just you wouldn't have necessarily expected. Jim Jordan, Tom Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene were all staying together in one press, a little clutch they had, saying, "Oh, they're all voting for it, and everybody should vote for it." And those are traditionally folks that are usually going against what leadership would do. So he's been able to build McCarthy some relationships with people that are in the more conservative chunk of the House Republicans that are paying off. That they have there's a trust level that's built up, and politics is about relationships. If you show up in somebody's office and say, "I want you to vote for this," and it's the first time you've talked to them in a year, good luck. Maybe that'll work. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if it's something where you've built up some trust and you've gone through some battles together and you've built up relationships, it's a lot easier to go through the next battle together. So it seems to be paying off for McCarthy.
Now, I've got to take a break, but I'm going to have you think about this while we're on the break. Do you think Chip Roy, there's been some veiled threats, do you think they try to challenge him as Speaker? But we'll find out about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, this is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Now, Joe Sempolinski is our guest, and I asked before the break, do you think McCarthy will be challenged on this, Joe? Because I know Ken Buck said just yesterday there will be a discussion, motion to vacate. Yeah, stay tuned.
I think it's possible. I think it's less likely than it maybe was 48 hours or so ago. And I think that's because you had 2/3 of the Republicans in the House vote for this.
Right.
If you had gone below the so-called majority of the majority threshold, where if you had more Republicans voting against it than for it, then a motion to vacate would have been almost certain.
Right.
Now, it only takes one member.
That's the big thing.
Under the current House rules. That was part of the Speaker. It only takes one person to bring the motion. Then what would happen is you'd have a vote on it. And if they vacate, they then have to have another Speaker election. So it's not like somebody can just stand up and he's not Speaker.
Right.
But to start the process of considering whether there should be a change, it only takes one person. So it's tough to predict anything that can be done by one person who just wakes up this morning and feels like doing it. But the fact that there was a broad enough coalition that voted for this deal, and you had very conservative members voting for it, you had people that are less conservative voting for it. Now, you did have 1/3 of the Republicans in the House not vote for it. And that was actually a pretty broad coalition, too. You had some folks that are very conservative, and you had more middle-of-the-road members that were voting no. So that obviously shows that there wasn't total unity, but I think there's probably enough unity that you're not going to see a challenge to the speakership at this particular juncture. But, you never know. You never know. I would say less likely than it was. It appeared to be going through some of the sticky parts of this negotiation.
Well, and our Congressman Nick Langworthy said, no one thought House Republicans would be able to secure a deal that cuts spending and reduces the deficit. In a divided government, no deal is perfect, but this is more consequential than in any recent history. And I agree. No one said this is perfect, but isn't that negotiation?
Yeah, I think just to sort of describe the two camps within Republican politics, I think you had one camp, and I'll call it sort of the McCarthy camp, and Langworthy would be somebody that he voted for it, so he'd be in that camp, that was saying, well, Biden wanted a clean debt limit. Right. Biden said he wouldn't negotiate. The fact that we got anything is a win. Take the win, move on. That's sort of the McCarthy camp. And the sort of Chip Roy camp, because he was sort of the leader of the opposition.
He was.
And I respect Chip. He's a very principled guy. He was somebody, when I was there, that was sort of forcing us to take votes and go on the record on things that in the past were just sort of voice voted and gone through. And so he's a very principled guy. I like Chip is somebody that sort of commands respect. He's not a goofball in any way, shape, or form. You've got to respect him because he's so strong and he's so well-spoken. Yeah, he's coming at this from a very principled position. And so when he speaks, he does carry weight. And his position is, and again, 1/3 of the Republicans voted no, and so to describe their position is the country's fiscal health is dramatically even worse, I think the general public realizes. And it has gotten dramatically worse over the course of COVID because spending has gone up so dramatically. And this deal sort of locked in that increase and then limited increases on top of that increase. And the Roy position would be something like, well, this is our one big leverage point. The crisis is so big, we got to roll the dice and go bigger.
Yeah.
Those would be the two camps. You know, you're sort of have a divide over, you know, the strategy of when do you really push, how much can you get, and anytime you have a negotiation, you have people that feel like, oh, we got more than we thought we were going to. That's win. And you have people that feel like, oh, we could have gotten more if we pushed a little harder. That's the same if you buy a house. It's the same if you buy a car.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of look back and say, well, could I have gotten the price down another couple
Buyer's
of percent?
remorse,
Could
right,
I
or
have?
whatever.
Did that guy roll me? I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, but just to lay it out for the people, those are the two thought processes. Is one, we got more than we thought we were going to. Let's move on. And the other, this was our best leverage point in the entire term.
Right.
We should have stuck them for more. Those are the two positions.
These are just natural positions.
Yeah.
We do have to take a short break here in a second, but I want to ask this. Do you think Tim Kaine is kind of threatening holding up as much as he can in the Senate because of this pipeline? I love when I saw the pipeline that it says Manchin. It might as well say
Yeah,
Manchin's
it's
pipeline.
Manchin for re-election pipeline.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, do Democrats then now take the blame and not in the Senate? Because then it's all on them.
Well, the Senate's interesting because you have people on the right, you know, especially Senator Lee, who's saying he may gum it up because he thinks it's he's sort of in the Chip Roy camp.
Yeah.
That I described. And then you have Kaine, which is unusual because Kaine he's one of the most mild-mannered guys in the world.
Uh-huh.
I walked through the Senate side. He was the only one that even smiled at me. By the way. Senators aren't nice to House members. He at least smiled at me. He didn't talk to me. He smiled at me. But
Take the win.
But he was like, "Oh, this is the guy that comes to me for cabinet members to get through," and he's like bashing Biden. It was like he had a personality transplant, and who knows? And the Senate, when I talk about Senate procedure and House procedure, the Senate is based on consensus. The House is based on majority rule.
Yeah.
So if you have a firm majority, you can ram through whatever you want in the House. If you're in the Senate, if you have things that are controversial, any individual senator can really gum it up.
Yeah.
And we're talking about something where time is a factor, right? June 5th is when they're now saying that we run out of
Let's just move
debt
on to the week.
flex.
That's what they seem like they do.
Well, right. That's Washington. Kick that can.
Yeah.
So if you have a couple senators that are fired up, or senators that just know if I beat my chest and stamp my feet, I may be able to get something.
You got a pipeline? I want something.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah. Joe Manchin gets a pipeline. What do I get? You get that sort of sibling rivalry in the Senate. So stay tuned. I mean, we have a bicameral system. We're through the House. We're not through the Senate. Right. And now all the attention shifts to the Senate.
Do you think Hillary Clinton watched that and goes, where was that? Where was that?
Right, because Tim Kaine was Hillary Clinton's running mate.
Yeah,
and he was kind of a weenie.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden,
now he's John Wayne.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So maybe somebody hacked his phone or something. I don't know. Yeah.
We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We'll be right back. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and this is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program. We're being joined by former Congressman and current Steuben County Republican Chairman Joe Sempolinski. Joe, we have a lot left to cover, and I know we talked about the debt ceiling, but let's get to some presidential level stuff. That's always
politics.
The most fun to talk about.
Get your popcorn. Yeah. It's starting to heat up.
Now, there's no sense like belaboring DeSantis's rollout. I don't get the Twitter thing myself, but maybe he was going for an Elon Musk black censorship thing.
I think he was trying to do something innovative and different.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah. Did it take that much away from his message? The polling is saying that it did, but I mean, it's either you wanted to hear what he said.
Yeah, I think the polling that I've seen so far shows a mild bump.
Yeah.
Trump's still up significantly.
Yeah.
Like 30 points, which is a lot. But it's sort of, it was doing this, and then there's a little curve on the end. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, thank you. We're on TV.
We're on TV. I can actually use my hands now.
Yeah, on radio, you used to do the same thing. It never helped.
That's right, exactly. So I think the proof will be in the pudding over the next 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Because we're still a long way out. Nobody's voting until next year.
Yeah, people got to remember that. Sometimes you forget.
And you get all caught up, and especially it's the presidency, so people get all excited about it very early. So if it is this little boat,
Yeah.
and that's sort of all it is, Trump becomes pretty much, it's very easy for him going in. If that's the beginning of a trend where he erodes the Trump lead, then the race becomes more unpredictable.
Yeah.
If Trump comes down, does it become a two-person race, or does that open the door for somebody else that's a third alternative? Because you got Tim Scott that's now in the race. Chris Christie is going to announce in a few days. Which, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Pence is
next
going to
week
announce.
as well, it sounds like.
And you got Nikki Haley. So this race is going to go one of three ways. It's either going to stay where it's at, and it's a cakewalk for Donald Trump.
Yep.
It turns into a legit two-person race, and everybody else is sort of a sideshow. Or it turns into a true multiple-person race. I think that one is the least likely, because Trump would have to come down precipitously, and I don't see anything that's going to cause that. I think the question is this a cakewalk for Donald Trump, or do we have a legit down-to-the-wire mano-a-mano between DeSantis and Trump? I think anybody else is I've learned over the last 2 years anything can happen.
Anything.
That's the whole lesson I take away from my life over the last 2 years. But if you say what's likely is one of those two scenarios, and we'll find out over the course of the summer and early fall which of those two scenarios it is. It's a little early to tell.
And if it becomes a two-person race, then you've got the fear of, and again, I think this plays right into Trump's kind of line of being a political martyr, where the judge set the court date, right at the beginning of the primary season, right around come on.
Yeah, I think those court issues, they help Trump, because he has always presented himself as this outsider that's against the establishment. The deep state wants to stop him. The deep swamp wants to stop him. And all of a sudden, he's getting indicted on things that are, flimsy. And you have these court dates that seem to be picked politically. So those sort of things, I think, play into helping Trump, because you then have people that maybe aren't, I'm talking about Republican primary voters, that maybe there's a segment of them that aren't huge Trump fans, but also aren't huge deep state fans.
Right.
And go, wait a minute. Some of these things this guy's saying, there may be some reality to them.
So who has a better chance to win their primary? Chris Christie or Robert Kennedy Jr.?
Kennedy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that. But because Chris Christie, if he had run in 12, probably is president of the United States. Doesn't run and missed his moment, has a very poor showing in 16, comes in, fifth, I think it was, in New Hampshire or something, and that was it. And sort of is with Trump, and then against Trump, and then with Trump, and now is against Trump. And I don't know what the appetite there is for former Governor Christie. So this is a guy, again, if he had pulled the trigger in 12, I think is president of the United States.
Isn't that crazy?
And doesn't, and now is running, and I don't
for those days.
I think there is a problem in some people in politics that they get addicted to the attention.
And being surrounded by yes men or people that say you can do it.
Right.
But I think there is, some people can pull this off. Trump, to an extent, if you want to call him this, but he's a political pundit now. That's tough to come back and then be a candidate, because you have all that to live on. Pence did fine somehow, and I don't know if they couldn't find anything at his radio show. Trump was, I don't know if you call him a political pundit, but was always in the media.
Right.
But Chris Christie, like you said, the back and forth, I think that is not going to play well.
Yeah, and also we're talking about a primary electorate.
Yeah.
Right? This is a very conservative electorate. This is, when he was sort of riding high as governor, he could have run in 12 as more, I'm competent to run a government. And remember, he was having fights with the teachers union in town halls and stuff.
He was doing a good job.
And so he was sort of right on some very important issues of the day. And so he could have translated it. And he's coming off of, like you said, being governor of a large state, which is the most common way you run for president, is become governor of a large state. Now you're somebody, he's been out of office for a very long time. He has a failed presidential candidacy, and he's been, just stating his opinion on CNN or whatever.
Yeah.
There are things that he could have done after being in office that would have probably been better to prepare him for running for president again. And he did some other things, and now sort of at the last minute he's like, I'm going to run for president. And again, I don't. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't really see what his constituency is. Him in particular.
I've got to take a break, but did you see Rick Perry kind of was hinting towards it?
I had heard that. That's another one where you reach a point where everybody looks in the mirror and they see a president.
John Bolton, yesterday.
Are you going to run?
No, I said political pundits. That doesn't translate.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
okay. I'm not running.
Okay,
I'm not running
neither.
for president.
But John Bolton even yesterday.
Yeah.
I love this time.
His mustache told him to do it. I guess.
Dennis Miller used to call him the nuclear walrus. I always liked that nickname. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Joe Sempolinski is our guest this morning. Joe, what kind of influence does Pence play in all this? We've talked about Christie. Who does he take away from?
Yeah, I think Pence is a little more interesting than Christie in the sense that Pence has some degree of a natural constituency, which is evangelical voters,
Right.
Which are important in a primary. Obviously, Chris Christie is a former governor. Mike Pence is a former vice president.
Right.
So there's a different level of cachet there. Nevertheless,
Right.
I think they're going to poll probably in the same zone. Yeah. I think there's probably, like the way I described it, it's either going to be Trump or it's going to be Trump versus DeSantis. If the third category of something else happening, I think the most likely that is one of the others sort of breaks out.
Right.
And is that Tim Scott? Is that Mike Pence? Is that Nikki Haley? I don't know. I think it's unlikely somebody does break out, but it's going to be like one of them.
Right.
And
Tim Scott's doing really good. And Nikki
Tim
Haley's
Scott's,
doing really well.
they were probably smart to get in early,
Yeah.
where they had clear water.
Mm-hmm.
And these ones they're getting in now after Trump and DeSantis are sort of, place themselves as these two more major figures, that's tougher. This is just my personal opinion,
Sure.
my personal strategy. I've always felt if you're going to do it, do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what I did when I was thinking about running for Congress. I leaked it on your show.
You did, yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
you were the global exclusive that I was thinking about running for Congress. And I just said, all right, I'm thinking of doing it.
Yeah.
And this was April of the off year. And okay. And that paid off later.
I sure did.
So if you're going to do it, do it. And Scott and especially Haley did that.
Mm-hmm.
Where they said, all right, I'm getting in. And we'll see where it goes. So Pence is a little late. Obviously, he no longer is having a positive relationship with Mr. Trump.
His former
we'll
boss.
see how that plays out. But I think he is in a somewhat better position than Christie because he's more conservative, has a natural consistency. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, I still think it's either Trump very easily or Trump versus DeSantis in a bloodbath.
If Trump can go after his loyal press secretary the other day, what's he going to say about Pence?
I think that
gonna be
Mr.
similar.
Trump always lets people know what he thinks. You usually don't sit
That's
around
not even
going, I wonder what Donald Trump feels about this.
And that's not even me being negative. I was just shocked by that one.
Yeah.
And I'm not shocked that much anymore over the tweets.
Yeah, I did.
True.
She was pretty loyal to him.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're following, was it Truth? He truths, he doesn't tweet.
Yeah.
We'll probably hear pretty shortly.
I like now that the mainstream media has to quote Truth.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Yeah,
because it used to be this tweet.
tweeted this. No,
now it's on Truth Social. Anyway,
There you go.
Speaking of governors, as we were with Chris Christie, there's another governor making the news that could run for president. That's Andrew Cuomo, former governor. So what do you think? And I say that jokingly, but he's trying to make a comeback somewhere.
Yeah.
Is
the
it
question
Hyundai?
is where?
Yeah,
And he is still sitting on a lot of cash.
that's the thing.
Now that's in a state account, so that makes it a little trickier to do anything federal, like president or senate
I don't
or
think he's
whatever.
really doing that. But does he pull a Spitzer and try to be comptroller or something like
Oh,
that?
I could see that.
Yeah,
Like mayor of New York,
Yeah.
or state controller, or city controller, or something like that, because he has all that money. He feels he's been wrong.
Yes.
He's a vindictive guy.
Very.
We all know that.
Yes.
And I thought he was going to primary Hochul.
I did too.
And I don't talk to Andrew Cuomo. He doesn't tell me what he's thinking. I'd have to
Thank heavens.
I'd have to
Take a shower.
take a shower afterwards if I talk to him. But I think what happened was he polled because remember he started running ads.
Yeah.
We talked about this on your show.
Yeah.
He was running millions of dollars in ads. And early, he was running them.
Yeah.
And then he suddenly doesn't run. So I think he ran the ads, saw if the polls moved. They didn't. He said, "Oh, it's too soon. I'll pull up."
Yeah.
And now he's sitting on this money looking at maybe it's governor in 26. Maybe it's mayor, maybe something else. But he's going to run for something someday. He's too visible. He's too active, and he's sitting on too much money. He's just projecting the world, acting like somebody, "Oh, I'm going to run for something someday." And hopefully he will lose.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, that's what, again, he is so in a bubble where he doesn't even realize some of the things he says, like when he said he had no regrets over the COVID response.
Right.
And then, God forbid, what happened in the nursing homes. But to say you have no regret.
And they were already planning on writing the book,
Yeah.
apparently, right
Yeah.
from the jump, which
Yeah.
is sort of
Icky.
morbid,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know,
right, yeah.
like just do the job first,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when you're afterwards.
We
feel
don't
free
know
to write
what's
a book.
going to, no one knows what's going to happen right now. Can
exactly.
we not worry about a book?
I mean, talk about a guy that, because of his incompetence, killed tens of thousands of people.
Yes. And to say no
So,
regrets.
no regrets. Yeah, this is. I mean, Andrew Cuomo is a psycho. I mean, that's just what he is.
Yeah.
He's a pathological psycho guy, and you're sort of seeing it play out now, where he's still obsessed with getting back in the game. I was wronged by the attorney general and her report, and because he's become this sort of back and forth between Trump and DeSantis over the New York response versus the Florida response, and he's sort of been playing into that, which is a little weird.
Very weird.
So this is a guy that just can't let it go.
No.
And
Well,
everybody in politics knew he was a psycho when he was governor.
It was a worst kept secret.
Right. And you're sort of seeing that playing out now is his narcissism.
Yeah. Well, and you think about, we've seen a lot of people fall from grace, but his, in a political sense, was pretty amazing because he was on top of the world during COVID. When everybody else hated their life, he was like,
yeah, because I think he saw it as a path to the White House. I think that's what it was.
writing something
That's
that
where the
his
book
father
came
should have.
in. Right. And this, he's got major, everything I've heard, and for the record, I've never met Andrew Cuomo. It's all secondhand, be fair. But by everything I've ever heard, he's got massive daddy issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He had to be governor longer than his dad did because his dad lost to Governor Pataki, and he didn't even make it as long as his governor. His dad went. Sorry.
Yeah.
And he's going to run for president because his dad famously was Hamlet on the Hudson.
Yeah.
And was should I run? Should I not run? And that all came crashing down. But you're right. He was riding so high.
You had celebrities loving him.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching in the media those press conferences like they were gospel.
And the lesson I take from that is this is a guy that was treated everyone around him very poorly.
Yeah.
Republican and Democrat. And what happens that is a very good strategy, being a bully.
Yeah.
That's a very good strategy in the short or medium term because you can sort of browbeat people and do what you want. But it is a disastrous strategy every time in the long term in politics. Because what did I say at the beginning of the show about Kevin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we're surprised at what Kevin's able to get through. Whether you support the bill or don't support the bill, it's sort of surprising he's able to get through. And it's because of all these relationships I talked about. Cuomo was the exact opposite.
Yes.
He was burning relationships his entire career, bullying people, attacking people. And eventually, you stumble. Eventually, there's a problem. And the stumble was DeRosa admitting that they had cooked the books on the COVID numbers.
Yes.
And as soon as that stumble happens, if you're somebody who's burned all his bridges, it cascades. And it cascaded into the sexual harassment stuff. And no one, Republican or Democrat, was going to spend political capital getting in front of that train to protect that.
Yeah,
Jerk.
that guy. Yeah, that guy. Exactly.
That's about as far as I could say on television. I
Yeah.
won't say the words I want to say.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, if you're somebody that has good relationships, is a nice person who builds up coalitions, let's say you hit a stumble, you hit a rough patch, you make a mistake, people are going to go, all right, he's a good guy. He did this to help my constituents before. He did this to help the country before. We'll
cut him a little slack.
We'll figure out something before. Cuomo had burned every bridge and he
it
goes
was
off
quick.
a cliff, and everybody sort of says,
Yeah, and now he can't handle
what
it.
a shame.
Yeah.
See you later. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
I know. We got to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Marcus Street in Corning. Joe Sempolinski is our guest. Joe, we've covered a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Let's move it. We talked about Cuomo, so let's keep it in New York. What did you think about the New York State budget? I don't think we had a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, so the governor said she'd rather have a late budget than a bad budget.
Right.
And she managed to get both.
She got both.
She got a late bad budget.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, well, first of all, she proposed the largest budget in the history of the state.
Right.
And then it went up from there.
Mm-hmm.
So just on that alone, you have a significant problem. And the scale of that problem, I think, is people don't comprehend. I mean, we spend more than Texas and Florida put together.
Isn't that crazy?
And each of them are bigger than New York State.
Right.
Each of them, if you did, just per capita basis, they should be spending a little bit more than us. We spend more than both of them put together.
Yeah.
So we started the show talking about the fiscal problems and the spending addiction at the federal level. We have it just as bad at the state level. Now, the difference is the state has to balance their budget.
Right.
So the federal government can go into debt.
Mm-hmm.
We see
we
got to learn
see the
all
effects.
about that over the last week.
Yeah.
State, they can bond, but they got to balance their books every year. Mm-hmm. So that cost, that spending gets passed on to you and me. And we see the results of people leaving for lowest tax states, whether it's the two states I mentioned or whether it's some of the others. So the level of spending was gargantuan.
Yes.
The thing that supposedly gummed up the process was bail reform, right? And she was, in this case, to the right of some Democrats. And then she's running around saying she got something. Well, she got a de minimis sort of fig leaf change.
Yeah.
And now she's going to run around saying she's anti-crime, all these things.
Which is smart because she saw what Zeldin did
right.
with
Zeldin
that.
almost beat her on that issue.
Yeah, so with a political, we know the truth, but in the political world, a lot of people are going to say, well, see, she's trying.
Right, that's right. And that's
Yeah.
exactly the effect that she wants to produce in the public. That, she was trying to protect us. Now, they changed the least restrictive standard, which is saying that judges had to use the least restrictive means to get people to come back. Now they have a little bit more discretion on that as to, it sort of just clarified what their discretion was. Didn't change what crimes were eligible for bail, didn't change whether bail reform existed or not. And what Republicans were pushing for was a dangerousness standard. Mm-hmm. We are the only state in America where a judge cannot determine bail based on whether the person's dangerous or not. 49 other states. Yeah. Liberal states, conservative states, the judge can say, oh boy, let this guy out.
Yeah, that's not.
He's going to go shank somebody on the way to the bus stop.
Yeah, right.
I got to, for the good of the public safety, I got to put some restrictive bail on this guy. Every other state in the union, a judge can look and make that determination. Not in New York.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
And so that's what Republicans push for. It's like, all right, if you're going to reduce the crimes that are eligible for bail, let's at least say, all right, this person was brought in on a crime that's not bail eligible, but he's going to go hurt somebody if I let him out. And it's clear that's not where anybody wanted to go. In fact, there was a liberal state assemblywoman who was on hunger strike against the de minimis fig leaf changes that the governor wanted. Yeah. So this has turned into this really hot button political issue on the left. And to the detriment of all of us, to the detriment of the personal safety of every person in the state of New York, Democrat, Republican, urban, suburban, rural. So it was a bad budget. That's a long way of saying it is a bad budget.
But just before we go to break, I thought the New York Post put it perfectly. You could get arrested for shoplifting, right? And while you're in front of the judge, say, hey, as soon as I'm out of here, I got to go shoplift a suit for my next trial.
Right.
And there's nothing he can do.
That's right.
I mean, he could. I mean, it's nuts. But I thought the New York Post.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we got to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Put my headphones in. Our guest, Joe Sempolinski. Joe, we've talked all national, New York. We've talked about a lot of stuff, but let's go local. How are the local races going? You are the current Steuben County Republican chairman. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah,
You've been for a while.
It's been 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was elected just under 7 years. So this fall will be 7 years. So yeah, things are going well. We have 17 members in our Steuben County Legislature. 10 of those seats are up for re-election. 7 of them are not. It's a staggered thing. And of the 10, 8 of the seats are currently held or were more recently held. There's one vacancy, one sort of appointment vacancy by Republicans. All of those seats, the only candidates that have filed Republican candidates. So we're going to hold all the seats that we have. And then we have 2 seats where they are currently held by Democrats, one in which the incumbent's running for re-election, one in which they're not.
Okay.
Very famously not. And so Waylon Cohocton is one. We have a good candidate there. And here in Corning,
yes.
The seat currently held by legislator Mayo, who is the one not running for re-election.
Right.
We have Allison Hunt, the deputy mayor of the city of Corning, and she's running a very aggressive campaign.
She's doing great.
I'm going to be. She's having a fundraiser here in a couple weeks, and I'm co-host of that fundraiser along with Mr. O'Mara, Mr. Palmisano, Sheriff Allard. All the.
It was a who's who.
It was. As far as for Steuben County, that's a who's who.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be on that list.
Yeah.
And so the major public officials in the area are all behind her candidacy. I think she's again got a really good shot, and that's a seat where it's Democrat held. The Democrat incumbent has had a massive, unprecedented scandal, especially for Steuben County, and now is not running for re-election, and there'll be a contested race in the fall. We have, I know you had our city council candidate on your show in the 4th ward. She's great, isn't she?
The thing is, whenever you have someone new to this, you never know how it's going to go, and that's just the nature of the job. She did fantastic. If she should have took over the show, I could have walked away.
No, she's a very impressive candidate. And so Lisa's running in 4. And then we have some contested races in Hornell and the city council. So those are the big ones. But the good thing is, county, we're playing 100% offense.
That's great.
City of Corning, playing 100% offense. Hornell is sort of a mix. They're coming after 1 or 2 of ours. We're going after 1 or 2 of theirs. So that's a little bit more of a mixed bag, but we still have a chance to. We're already at 8-2 on the city council in Hornell. We have a chance to get to 9-1 if everything breaks the way we want it to. So I'm very happy, and our county-wide slate is unopposed.
Okay.
So we can again. The massive amounts of money you would have to spend on a contested countywide race, the amount of money you have to spend defending county legislative seats, we don't have to do. We can use our resources on offense and then distribute. We've already started doing this, distribute resources to the cities to go after city council races. Great. So I'm very pleased at where we're at. I think it's going to be another good year for the Steuben County Republican Party. And then going into the even-numbered year, the presidential year, I think we'll be on a great place.
And I know not only is locally we're doing good, but I understand you're doing well, getting a big-time award.
Oh, you talk about the Young Republicans? Yeah. So the state Young Republicans, they're having their convention later this month.
Oh, that's great.
And they are going to make me Alumni of the Year. They do like a Congressperson of the Year. It's Claudia Tenney this year, which is great. I love Claudia. Senator of the Year, Assemblyperson of the Year, and Young Republican Alumni of the Year, which is a great honor because it's throughout the whole state. But it makes me feel old.
Yeah.
If I'm a Young Republican alum.
Not just Young Republican.
I'm not Young Republican of the Year.
Yeah.
There is a Young Republican of the Year. It's the Broome County chairman is a Young Republican. My counterpart in Broome County.
But it wasn't you.
No, because I'm too old. I'm an old guy. It's like, let's bring him out. Lifetime Achievement Award. Yeah. Well, I'll get my walker and come out. But no, I got a note from the state president who's from Staten Island. Nice guy. He's also an assembly chief of staff, and he said we decided to give you this. And I think where it came from was people were respected what I did as far as being focused on doing the job and not doing something that was maybe politically expedient for myself. And I think that's what everybody should do is remember who you work for. And even, as I said many times, even serving in a position for 4 minutes or casting 1 vote is a real honor. And if I can spread that message throughout young Republicans that, hey, this isn't about you. This is about the people. If I can be an example that people can point to, I'm very, very proud of that.
Well, I want to ask in just a second how everybody gets involved that's watching, but we do have to take our last short break, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox being joined by Joe Semplinsky. Joe, just before we go, how can people get involved? You mentioned that you're going to receive that award from Young Republicans. I know there's Young Republican groups, but you're the state, or the, well, I almost gave you a job. No. You are the Steuben County Republican chairman. How can people get involved at that level?
Well, yeah, so reach out. joe.semplinsky@gmail.com is my personal email. Send me a note. Get involved. We're always looking for people, especially at this stage. We're through petitions, but we're going to need petitions next year for folks. And also, like I said, in Hornell, in Corning, in Wayland-Go-Oxon, we're going to have competitive elections. So we're going to need people to go out and knock on doors and make phone calls and do those sort of things. And this is at a scale, these races are at a scale where one person who's a dedicated volunteer can tip a race.
Yes.
If you got somebody that's just gung-ho and goes out and knocks on a few hundred doors, that can be the difference between winning and losing for a local race. So I know everybody's amped up about Trump and DeSantis and Biden and Kennedy and all these people running for president, and they should be, because that's the future of our country. But that starts locally, and you can have a lot more individual impact locally than you can on a presidential election. So I encourage people to be involved at every level that we have elections. And this year in Steuben County, we have some very strong and in most cases young candidates that are running for city and county positions that I'm very, very excited about.
And the reason I bring up the Young Republicans, because it really, all ages can get involved. I mean, when was the first time you were on a campaign just helping knock on doors?
Oh, I am 40, and I have been actively involved in local politics for 20 years on campaign stuff, and before that I was a congressional intern. So more than 20 years. So yeah, you don't have to be, and we have there are high school kids in the area that are very involved in politics.
That's great.
So even if you're not old enough to cast a ballot, if you're 16, 17, you can go knock on doors and drive around and let people know where you feel and what the direction of the country should be.
Yeah. Well, Joe, we are out of time. Thanks for giving us so much time this morning.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Frank.
All right. We'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please join us. Hi, I'm Frank Acom. Thanks for checking out our YouTube page. We'll be uploading each edition of Frankly Speaking 1 week after the original air date. So, let me remind you to watch the live version of Frankly Speaking, weekday mornings starting at 7, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox.